Welcome to POMNADO, a new show where every week on a Monday I will pick on a team and let you know my thoughts and my concerns and hopefully create a discussion point. Today we are looking at Carlton Blues. So this will be the last time I talk about Carlton this week until we get into the game against Hawthorn, because honestly, it's killing me, but I've got a lot to get off my chest. So let's run the new intro, get into it. So Carlton come back off the back of a defeat to the odds-on favourites to finish 18th by the media pundits alike, in a game that really has created a lot of questions. Now, I want to caveat this video before I start that this isn't me throwing the toys out of the pram. This isn't me saying that the sky is falling in. So I want none of that malarkey or anything like that, because I just find it so patronising that if anyone dares ask a question of any football club, that's the go-to response. This isn't about how this makes someone feel. This is about asking questions. So we'll start number one. For me, it feels like the apathy and the disconnect is off-field in its fan base alone. I see a lot of comments like, oh, it's all right, in 95 we lost 2 games. It's all right, Sydney lost games. Brisbane lost 0 and 4 last year. And that one really gets me, because, you know, the whole tangible comparisons of it's okay, don't worry about it, tomorrow the sun will rise. This is a lineal problem at this football club. This is a team that, if you look at Michael Voss's last 10 games, it's 8 losses, 2 wins, them 2 wins coming from 17th and 18th. It's that whole attitude of don't ever dare ask a question, or don't ever be too disheartened, or don't ever be too happy. Sport is about emotion, and the big part of emotion there is learning to deal with what causes that and how to apply that. When you compare us to Brisbane, Sydney, the 95 Carlton team, the 95 Carlton team is the most balmy one, because the sport has changed. It's quicker now, it's a lot more dynamic now. You can't just go out and buy players and roll up the salary cap. There is stringent rules in place for acquiring players. It's a more competitive league. All 18 clubs now are experts on potential, what the players are worth, what the value is. This game now has got into a huge era of professionality. And then for me, when I hear people compare, oh, it's all right, Brisbane did it, Sydney did it, Richmond did it in 2017. They had some shocking losses, didn't they? For me, it's like using a comparison like this, the simple one that everyone understands. It's like saying that because you've always lent your mate money, he always gives you the money back. Out on time, always up front. And then because you've found out your new next door neighbour is a convicted fraudster and embezzler, you're just going to give him the same amount of money. You're going to give him 20k though this time, because based on your theory, one of your mates paid you back. Why would someone that has got a conviction and a history of stealing money not pay you back? It's an absolute it's crackpot mentality. For me, you've got to look at Carlton in a linear sense. This rebuild has been going on, officially from 2015, 2016, and we're still here. And that leads me on to point 2. It's about, if the fans have that standard and ask that question, it's about looking at the continuing trend. I was on the Richmond podcast and I was very adamant of how you beat us. Pressure around the ball, eventually our game plan comes unstuck. The fumbles will happen, poor ball use, poor execution, poor decision making, and a complete capitulation internally. This side is in the Premiership window on all the metrics that the AFL judge it on. Age, experience. And when you watch Carlton play, particularly over the last 50 games, it's always had a pattern of they go on a winning run, then questions get asked. Then they go back on a winning run. The Blue Boys are just never a consistent side. And I think if you actually look at who they are as football players, even from 2016, them long run type of players, they have always had these stigmas. They have always been poor users of the ball under pressure. It's something that's always been kind of near enough is good enough. And it is one of them concerns for me that it doesn't seem to be addressed. Under Voss, this has been a huge pattern that the Blues almost play on vapour as opposed to structure. You look at that wonderful run, and I'm not taking it away from them, but 2023 was one of the finer runs of football I've seen from the Blues going into them final series. It was basically the backs were on the wall and there was nothing to lose. It always does seem to be, though, when the narrative changes that there is potentially something to lose, in-game and in-season, this nervous energy is infectious. Now, the club kind of distanced themselves from this. It's point 3, the blasé attitude off the field. The Blues are incredibly blasé with just their narratives all the time. Let's use an example. SEN, the Booker Members Day, a perfect opportunity there for the membership department and the dignitaries of the club to maybe front up and be a little bit accountable. And instead, they cancel it. But then you look at this from the last year. TDK was started as a sub and came on and was beautiful. But the distance of asking that selection question in the post-game, if you go back and watch that Brisbane post-game, there is very rare any sound bites there where he's talking about the game, talking about his selection, talking about did he get it wrong. 5 minutes of it is filled with Michael Voss painting this romantic story about Doc knocking on the door and saying he's going to get right. Totally irrelevant to the game. It's a nice little story, but this is where the Blues are. When I look at teams around them and how they talk about losses, I don't rate JL. I think him at Fremantle isn't an inspiring coach. But when he's coming out and just owning it, unacceptable performance. Ken Hinckley, he cops a lot of stick. Even he says it's not an acceptable performance. It feels like everything this club does is to protect the brand over protect the results. And it is a fascinating chain of events because I look at the players sometimes and wonder what they're told before they go out. Because it seems in-game it gets worse, and that's where leadership is a big part. You saw Carlton, they had the sports psychologist sat on the bench. That did zero, didn't it? If anything, throughout the game, the fumbles, the caginess, the excuse-making started a lot quicker under pressure than it did pre-game. So whatever's been said pre-game, I genuinely think goes okay. The boys look okay to start the game. It's usually as it starts getting worse in game, the more fumbles happen. And it's little things of accountability. If the media part of the team can't be accountable because they're dealing with the general public and the media, and then Voss can't say the word loss or flag, how can the players in-game be accountable? That's when you get Nick Haynes pissing about with the ball and not seeing it out of bounds, which you don't see at any other club, really, unless it's a first-year player. That's when you get them spilled uncontested marks. That's when you get that handball coming out of the back line that should hit a runner, instead hits him 2 metres to the right, so he's got to deviate. Because if you're not accountable at the very raw level of looking for perfection, you're never going to be any good at anything. And I genuinely feel for the players at times because I don't feel like anyone's ever looked at, say if you watch that Geelong win, a really good win, go back and watch the entries inside 50. They were bombs and they were paid off. There was sometimes Harry's taken marks on 4 people, incredible marks. Charlie has done something that few forwards can do and ran 30, 40 metres at pace to get in front of smaller and bigger players. It's almost like it's a results-based exercise before there is an issue at the football club. When I look at Voss over the last 3 years, he came in, stoppage and pressure, and that, ironically, were the words that was used in the review that got Teague sacked. So there was a huge focus on tackle pressure, and yes, that got better. But then you saw the modern-day game go to a very uncontested brand of football. Win the ball, get away from it. Win the ball, get away from it. All the top teams are doing it. Carlton tried to be a little bit more looser around stoppage, right? They became the best stoppage and clearance side in the league. Last year, they try and make some amendments, and then suddenly they become the third worst side from defending from stoppage and clearance. And all the improvement we saw started to stagnate, but then the half-back line started to score more goals. And then you snap forward to what you've seen at the minute, and it's almost like a smorgasbord, and there's not many teams out there that kind of totally change their identity. And it's like there's an accountability issue on the field. I feel for the players because I don't think anyone's ever analysed a win. Genuinely, I don't think anyone's ever analysed a win and goes, right, okay, Charlie Kerner has taken a mark on 6 players here. In a real game, when they're playing well, they're going to intercept that and kill us on the slingshot. And I feel like it's a whole accountability problem. Even when you look, and I'm not going to take the piss out of it, but you look at what Luke Sayers did, that accountability there is the problem. You have got no one owning it, creating the biggest fictitious lie you've ever got. Since then, we've found he's employed a spin doctor agency, as reported by the Herald, to try and mask the damage. Then he's released a statement saying he's standing down. This should be the end of it. That's not how you hold yourself accountable, because at no point has he owned anything. Well, that's the same with the football club. No point has he owned it. And that leads me to point 4. What area are we in talent-wise? When you look at Carlton against Richmond and you look, they're one of the only teams to have won the inside 50 count by that much, all the stat metrics, and lost the game. And then you ask yourself the other question. Cripps does what Cripps does, but then when you think, if there was any other midfield in the league that has won the ball that many times, you've got Cripps on 30 plus, Walsh, Chera, and TDK. TDK nearing the 30 mark, and the other boys pushing that 30 mark. Would any other side lose? Like, it felt like to me, and I've gone back and watched 6 of them losses in the last 10 games, including Richmond, so 7. You look at that game and you think, this happens a lot. The Blues get the ball in the engine room, but it's almost like teams have worked out, give them the ball in certain areas because they're not going to ascertain any damage from there. And I look at this list and I think in my heart of hearts, does it perform to its potential? My question mark at the start of the season, I had Carlton anywhere from 6th to 12th in my pre-season predictions. The reason is for every Richmond game, there will be a game in the season that Carlton buck the trend and play brilliantly. And that's usually when the other team almost goes in its shell. The Geelong game is a great example of that game, where the team just went down. They had a few players out, Blues piled on the goals. There was too much to do. And then Geelong have to go from that rigid, very tight system where you take short kicks away and be a bit more ambitious, commit more men forward. And that seems to be how Carlton win games. They either bully you over or they forced you not to do the simple thing. And at the moment, the simple thing to beat us, and looking at them 8 losses in the last 10, it's been take the short kicks away, make it a little bit harder, really get high up the ground and ask Carlton to kick through you. And we saw St Kilda do this to Adelaide this week, like they did to us in pre-season. And Adelaide just went shorter, went with runners, ran in numbers. And Carlton do this to portions, like you saw it in the first quarter. But it's almost like what they are designed to be gets taken away from them when it gets tough. So what area are the Blues talent-wise? For me, this Blues side, it's an unacceptable loss. And I think if anyone's downplaying it and saying it's only round 1, I ask you this, what about the 8 losses out of 10? What about the 8-2 start and then the back end of the year that we missed finals? What point do you stop asking the question? Because this is a cycle. This is a cycle, and if it continues to be a cycle, are we playing for 8th, 7th and just say we're in September? Or are we playing for a flag? Because I was under the illusion the rebuild ended in a flag. And that's not a lineal end. That's an end where, okay, we've done the rebuild, we're where we are now, and then it becomes a maintaining situation. And I think if we're totally honest, the level of arrogance from fans, from the way the Blues treated Richmond, it was almost like we're 41 points up. We're better than them. They now will cede. They will take the knee. And the simple case is, what are they arrogant about? Everything Carlton has achieved is a lifetime ago. And playing finals, nearly every team in the league has played finals in that period, with the exceptions of Gold Coast, but everyone else has had a sniff at finals. So where is the bragging rights? Where is the arrogance? I saw Carlton making more of a noise when Collingwood lost to GWS than I do about their own football team. And the levels of arrogance for me are really toxic at times. We've got to get better. There's got to be a better baseline. And the baseline from the Blues is either splendid or it's chaos. And I find it hard to believe that a top 6 oldest team in the league and the most experienced in that bracket, where we're looking for flag winners generally, is still so wet behind the ears, still so naive, and still can't control the game. And this is something that has started at 2015. And when I hear Adam Uze take over the youngest side in the league at the minute, and they're saying their anchors is pressure, their ankles is second and third efforts, that's what they're focusing on. It says to me that's the thing you're taught day one. And then I hear Voss in his press conference talk about it year 9 in a rebuild, year 4 coming up for him. It's genuinely terrifying for me. So where to from here? We're not going to spit the toys out the pram, but there comes a point that there should be a level of consistency. And yes, it's only round 1. But my question to you is, what happens if you're at round 3 and it's 0-3? What are you going to say then? It's only round 2 and round 3. Still 20 weeks to go. When I hear Jack Silvani, looking at his body language, didn't believe a word of what he was saying. It's the 3rd time this week I'm disgusted with the club. 1, how they handled the Hollands thing. 2, how they played against Richmond. And 3, sending arguably the guy who put out the most effort to spiel me full of nonsense and be a good little boy and sit in the corner. To say, oh, it's all right, we've still got 21 weeks to work on it. He didn't believe that. Because I know he doesn't believe it, because when he kicked that goal and the margin was 2 goals, I knew he believed. The way he reacted, he was trying to get his mates up and about. And they weren't willing to come to the table. Where to from here from the Blues? For me, it's real simple things we're talking about. What holds us back? No other side puts their ruck in, their best inside midfielder in the ruck. No other side would have a key forward playing against Blight and Ben Miller and be so laconic. No other side would wait until 5 minutes to go to swing someone forward to win the game. No other side would just continually long bomb it when Richmond are killing you on transition. No other side wouldn't look to adapt the way you move out the ball when you keep turning it over in the back half of the ground and hemorrhaging goals. It's the basics that we're talking about. It's the real raw basics. And like when Voss is saying we have to get better and it's a lesson, some of these guys are 30 years old. You know what I mean? At that age, they should be thinking end of my career type stuff. And we're saying that, and I think they're capable. I think at the minute, this issue is from top to bottom. It's this lethargic, excuse-making, don't want to put my head up the pulpit. And what I saw was Richmond had young kids and old men, Camden McIntosh, Nan Curvis, who were willing to put their head in the firing line and say, I'm going to drag you across. And I saw the Blue Boys not having anyone else come to follow their leaders. And at times their leaders are the worst as well, on field. And it's a real systematic problem. It's a real systematic. The Blues, for me, are in a lot of trouble. And the Blues, I don't think, have 21 weeks as they've fed Jack Silvani to say. I think the Blues have 4 weeks. Can they do it? No doubt about it. It's all up here for me. But I think whatever happens this year, if this year doesn't result in a flag, we have to now start putting them under the microscope. And my message to the fans is it's okay to hold them to account. There is a certain level of minimum expectation to play for this football club. I was angry for Collingwood in my review last week because I care about football. And fuck the rivalry for a second. If I'm going to spend time talking about Collingwood, I'm going to give them my passion. I'm going to say that they let themselves down and what they stood for. The problem is they haven't really let Carlton down for what they stand for, because this is a habit. They let themselves down in games that is inexcusable, that top teams put away consistently, particularly when you haven't proved anything. We're not Brisbane. We're not Collingwood. We don't have a flag that is still look brand new. You couldn't sell Carlton's 95 flag because it would be fucking old and used. Gets brought out twice a day just to make sure people stay quiet. This is a real big problem for me that Carlton has got to change the ecosystem of getting in the now, staying in the moment, because it's too easy to be distracted by non-linear things, pointless things. You know what I mean? Cripps won a Brownlow, whoop-de-doo, well done. That will get pushed at some point. That is the kind of mentality that at the moment we should be driving that standard, and the club should be driving that standard, and the players damn well should. And that standard not taking anything away from Richmond, but they were hungrier than us. They wanted it more than us. And I don't buy into that narrative that we had nothing to lose. I mean, nothing to gain, everything to lose. You have a bit of fucking pride. And I feel like the biggest way we bastardize our history is the apathy we show on and off the field, particularly in the 5 years. Now we've only started to be a little bit relevant by on-field stuff. On-field stuff. I feel like it's apathetic, that attitude of, okay, we deserve it. Hard work gets you just desserts, and the truth be told, Richmond proved that. They worked harder, they worked smarter, they worked longer. The Blues are there. Hopefully it's a good year for the Blues. Hopefully they can turn it around. As I say, no doubt they've got the talent, but talent only gets you so far. Will, determination, some serious talking to each other and being there. But at the minute, the narrative to beat Carlton is simple. Make it hard, make it tight, and before you know it, this team becomes 23 players trying to protect themselves, not communicating with each other, and trying to do as much as they can individually as opposed to doing as much as they can together for longer. Hopefully the Blues can sort it out. I'll be back next week. I hope you like this new segment, POMNADO, where I just get it off my chest. I'm looking forward to doing another team next week. There was a few that made the cut, Port Adelaide and St Kilda, and Fremantle definitely could be there. I'll be watching them with peace and anticipation to do this. Make sure you like and subscribe. Till next time. Peace.
Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it innocent, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.